My next question more so pertains to us. What do you think people in the West, more specifically us in New Jersey, what can we do with what's going on right now? What can we do to gain power, right, and to turn the tide to make it towards supporting the people of Palestine, to show the people and to show all these political leaders that we don't stand for this, right, and that our voice actually matters? What can we do to gain power?
I think that when you look at the picture in America as it stands today, I think the reality is that the elections in November are going to be very tight between Biden and Trump, if they're both on the ballot by November anyway, because the Atlantic published an article yesterday that Biden should be removed as a Democrat candidate, and Trump is going to face this lawsuit in New York. Today, I think the judge ruled he has to pay $340 million in order to, is that okay? Yeah, give that to me. The judge has ruled that he has to pay $346 million. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me now? Allahi barak. I think that the picture in America is one in which the data suggests it will be a tight election come November between Biden and Trump. If Biden and Trump are even on the ballot by November. Trump today, a court ruled he has to pay $345 million for inflating his finances to secure loans. It's the first of a series of trials. He may even end up being disqualified before November comes. And there was an article yesterday in the Atlantic which suggested that Biden is not the right nomination for the Democrats. They need to change Biden quickly if they want to win in November. But in the case that it is Trump or Biden, I think the picture does demonstrate that Muslim votes will matter in the November elections, and that if Biden loses the Muslim vote, he stands the potential of losing the entire election. So I think that that's the first part, in that Muslims do have the ability to punish genocide, Joe. The second dynamic is that, according to some reports coming out of Europe, the suggestion is that Biden is more concerned that the Muslims can convince the African Americans to also punish Biden. There was a letter by 13 pastors from the African American churches, that came out 2 days ago that said, we can't convince our congregation to vote for Biden. We can't convince them to reward genocide. And I think what Biden is concerned more than anything else is that although the Muslims will abandon him, the Muslims will also keep being loud and talking about Palestine, and they will keep raising the awareness, and they will keep forcing it to be a headline topic until November, in a way that will continue to shift public opinion away from Biden. I think that Biden, when he sees the shift in public opinion that Muslims have already brought about, you see the polls, he's falling in his support and the like, I think Biden believes that he will be able to recover before November, because Muslims will move on to other issues and they will no longer talk about Gaza and Palestine. They'll start to think with a cool head, between quotation marks. They'll start to think carefully. They'll start to think about, the nice 3-bedroom places that they live in. They'll start to think about, the nice cars that they live in. Is it worth having to share, being in discomfort in these particular areas? And then he believes that those polls will eventually change come September. What he's lost, he will regain. And that's why I think that for Muslims themselves, I think that they have the power to make change. They've clearly shifted public opinion. Under 35s are now increasingly pro-Palestinian. Kamala Harris is Zionist. Her daughter's raising money for Palestine. We've seen those in California, those of the left wing. There was an article in Politico which suggested that the left wing of the Democrat Party may not even vote Biden, even if it brings Trump in power, because they are concerned about supporting genocide and being seen to reward genocide. The point that I'm saying is that the Muslim power is not just only in the vote, it's also in their voice that is shifting American public opinion in a way that is unprecedented. And that's why one of the reasons that Biden is willing to support the attack on Rafah by the Israelis is because he believes that the Muslims are not an organized bloc, and that the Muslims are also flaky. That the Muslims are angry today, but they will support Biden tomorrow. That the Muslims are upset today, but they will forget tomorrow. That the Muslims are not Zionists who are committed to a cause. That the Muslims are not African Americans who are committed to a bloc. That the Muslims are divided because when he looks at some of his Muslim allies as well, he will see, for example, that a Muslim country gave him a fatwa in support of the genocide, in which imams were coming out and saying that make dua for Gaza, but don't talk about it. Make dua for Gaza, but don't mobilize on it. Make dua for Gaza, but don't boycott. Make dua for Gaza, but don't engage in initiatives that will cause disruption, because they want to normalize ties later with the Israelis. So we've seen, for Biden says, if I can get a fatwa in this regard, then I don't need to worry too much about the Muslims. The reason why I emphasize this point is to highlight this. when I say that Biden believes Muslims will forget, it doesn't mean Muslims will forget. What I'm saying is Biden is underestimating the Muslim vote. What I'm saying is Biden is underestimating the Muslim organization and underestimating what Muslims might be able to achieve. So when you ask me what power do Muslims have two powers that will completely shake and change the American political system forever. The first power is the vote, in that Muslims are concentrated in the 6 swing states, whether it's Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, and I can't remember the other 2. I think Florida is one of them, and I can't remember the other one. In any case, not only that, also in the local elections, what we're seeing is there are Muslims who are beginning to mobilize, at least what I've seen across my travels in America. I think I'm more American than most people here now, given based on the travels, you know, yeah. But the point I'm saying is that there are some states where they've been able to identify areas in the local elections where they're able to flip the vote. So they see 2 candidates, one who supported genocide, one who didn't. And they rally behind the one who didn't support the genocide in order to punish the one who committed the genocide. Muslims have this power to be able to flip votes. There are actually certain areas in the local elections where you'll find that the last candidate won by a majority of 4,000 in an area with 20,000 Muslims, of which only 3,000 Muslims went to vote. So the Muslims have that ability to vote and use their voting power. But the second, and perhaps in my opinion, more powerful power that the Muslims can deploy is the power of using their voice to convince Americans to abandon Biden. By that, what I mean is, there was an interesting billboard in Chicago which said, you know, we're sending $3.8 billion to Israel, but I can't afford healthcare. We're sending $3.8 billion to Israel, but I can't afford to pay my rent. The point is, there is this communication strategy that is taking place to convince the Americans that they also need to punish genocide. And there was an interesting video by that guy from Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, I can't remember his surname. Yeah, so he did an interesting video where they've done a sketch where somebody's buying in the supermarket and they say, no, you need to put those eggs back. Why? Because we need to give that money to Israel to commit genocide. We need to give money to Israel oh, we can't afford bananas then because, you know, we need to spend $80 a month sending to Israel so they can kill Palestinians. There's a lot of this rhetoric that is taking place, this voice that is shifting public opinion. So I think that although the Muslim nations are doing nothing and Biden seems to be amenable to an attack on Rafah, that doesn't mean all hope is lost. There's still the ability to punish those who supported genocide.